Kia ora and welcome to setting up your mobile automation framework right from scratch in 9 simple steps. Today, we are walking through step number 6, setting up controllers. Now, controllers is nothing but an abstraction layer that allows you to interact with the different Appium drivers or Appium mobile drivers. And you have different implementations of this driver. You could have one that is for Android, iOS, or even cloud. Now, for this particular step, we are deep diving into setting up controller for Android devices. What is covered in today's agenda is first, we need to have an app so that we can actually test this controller. I will show you where you can download this app. We have seen that in the earlier step when we were exploring the Appium inspector. We need to add an Appium dependency into our framework. And then we need to proceed to create our controller contract or interface. We need to create an implementation of that interface, which is what I said at the beginning. It's going to be an Android implementation of this contract or controller. And finally, we need to initialize this controller. So I will show you how to initialize this controller through the Pico container or Pico factory. All right, let's go ahead and let's download our demo app. For that, we are using SourceLab. So SourceLab provides a different demo apps for different platforms, including cloud. And in this instance, we are going to download Android demo app. This will take you to a GitHub repository where you can select between these two APKs. So that's the file that you're looking for. And I will strongly recommend you to download this MDA-2.0-21. So that's the latest version up to date. This may change in the future. You can right click, and if you're using Mac OS, then you just download linked file. Now, once you've done that, try to find that file in the downloads folder. Now, I done that previously, so my recommendation to you is once you download the file, so let's do it one more time. So I'll delete it from here. Let's identify the file. Here. Now, before you move the file into the resource folder under the test main folder of your source files, just rename it to something that is easy to actually work with and remember. For this particular example, I will just add demo underscore app and simply drag and drop into the resource folder. Perfect. So this is step number 1 of this tutorial. So we have download the application, we have renamed it, and now we have moved that into our resource folder inside our framework. Now, step number 2, we need to add a new dependency into our POM file. And if you remember in previous lessons or steps, we talk about anytime we want to add a new dependency, we need to locate our POM file, and under the dependencies tag, we need to create a new dependency to tell the framework that we're going to use some Appium libraries. Now, there is a website where you can find as many dependencies as you want, because this is, remember, dependencies are nothing but blocks of pre-built code that enables you to work faster. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So in this case, we're going to focus on downloading io.appium, and that's a Java client. We can simply copy and paste this Maven code. Let's go back to our framework, and just below this dependency, we can simply paste it. Now, please note that there is this version in here. We can move this version all the way up to the properties section. And the reason why we do this is because in the future, if there is a new Appium version, we want to have a central place where we kind of manage all our version for different dependencies. So I'm just going to put appium.version. And let's paste version number 9 in there. So let's go back to our version. You see that there is an error. Now we just need curly brackets, $sign at the beginning, and now we can reference to our Appium version that we place in the properties section. All right, so this is step number 2 of our tutorial. So number 1 was go and download the Appium, the demo application from SourceLab. Step number 2 is adding a new dependency into our POM file or our dependency management. As usual, we can just click here to load and download the new dependencies or refresh our dependency manager. Now, let's move on to step 3. Step 3 is about creating our first contract or our first interface in the controller section. So this is where we place all our controllers. And as you know, or as I explained earlier, so the first controller we need to create is nothing but a contract or an interface. This interface can be implemented either by Android, iOS, or cloud. For this tutorial, we are focusing only on Android version of this contract or controller. Let's create a new Java interface. And we're going to call this new interface mobile controller. Now, this mobile controller will have one public method, and that's going to be returning an Appium driver. Now, this is complaining. You say, hey, I don't understand what is Appium. This is an issue that is easily fixable by just hovering over the red text, and that will prompt this modal window that you can then just click on and import your Appium driver. So as I mentioned earlier, Appium driver is the portion of code that allows us to interact with the different elements in the device. With this we finalize our step number 3. So we move on now to step number 4. And now that we have a contract or an interface, we need a way to implement this interface. So we need to create another Java class, which is the implementation of mobile controller. So we're going to repeat the same steps. Controllers, new, that should be new, Java class. And in this instance, we are going to select class. Okay, so previously we select interface. This time we are working with Java class. And as you can see, the name of this Java class is nothing but mobile. Okay, we are making now reference to the platform, which is Android. And then we finalize with controller. So we're explicitly saying that this is an Android controller. Now we need to implement mobile controller. As soon as we do this, the compiler and the IDE is actually telling us, hey, you are trying to implement a contract, but we need to make sure that we actually implement all the methods that are explicitly declared on this contract. Cool. Next step is we need a WebDriver. So as you can see, an Appium driver. What we're doing right now is this method that is initializing the Appium driver for Android platform only for now. So we need to specify a private Appium driver. We just call it, or simply call it, driver. This is going to be initialized in here. So we're going to return driver. Now we haven't yet initialized it. So for that, we need to create a private method, which is the one that we're going to place all the code that will initialize this driver. All right. Now, before we start adding all the code that initialize the driver, we need to make sure we extract the path to our application or demo application. And for that, we need to create something called string mobile app. And then this is going to read from the source or resource folder. Let's just copy the name. Perfect. So this brings all the absolute path of demo app. Now we need to add capabilities. And we need to start importing some of these capabilities. All right. So some of these capabilities are similar as the one we use when we were working with the Appium inspector. So don't be too scared about it. It's just something that you can relate to. I will be sharing another link where you can find all these capabilities so you can have a look and potentially explore if you are keen. The last section of this code is to initialize the driver. So let's look at that. We still want to fail it because otherwise it's going to be silent failure. We want to avoid silent failures as much as possible. So now, if you're not familiar with Java, what we're doing with try catch is we're going to evaluate a portion of code. So that's try. So we're going to try it. And if for some reason this code fail and that exception is a malformed URL exception, then there's going to be an error. And we have two options here. So one, we either swallow the exception and we potentially just put a print line somewhere so we can see that, yeah, so there's something happened, or we stop the execution of the program and we throw a new runtime exception, which is what we're doing right now. Okay, so with this we finalize the implementation of the mobile Android controller. Just to pause and do a quick summary of what we've done so far. So the step number one was to download the demo app. We did that through the SourceLab website. Step number two was to add a new dependency into our POM file, and that was Appium, the Appium dependency. And then the step number three was to create a new contract. For that, we create a new interface in our controllers package. We call that interface mobile controller. And the step number four, we create an implementation, an Android implementation of that interface or contract. Now, to finalize, we need a way to initialize mobile Android controller so that it's actually available in the IOC container. There is a way to do that. We need to copy the name of our class, mobile Android controller. And we need to go back to customs, custom Pico factory. And here, what we're going to do is we need to initialize. And for that, we're going to create a new constructor. So public custom Pico factory. And we're going to add a new class. And that class is going to be mobile Android controller dot class. Right. Now there is one thing that I forgot to add, and it's this similar thing here. So we are initializing the mobile controller, okay? But so far we are not yet initializing this driver. So one way to do that is, again, so we need to create a constructor. And if you're not familiar, the way you create constructors in Java is nothing but public. This is the only method that do not have any return value, the same name as the class. And we call our init Android driver method. Okay. So now every time we initialize mobile Android controller, by default, it's calling this method, and this method is initializing the Appium driver. So now when we have to call the get driver, it will automatically get a initiated or initialized instance of this driver. Otherwise, we may have a null pointer exception. Cool. And this is it. This is the end of our session. Now, let's go back and do a quick recap of what we have learned so far. So in summary, we learned how to create controllers or contracts. We call these interfaces in Java or any object-oriented programming language. And we also learned how to do the implementation of these contracts or interfaces. And we also learned how to initialize these controllers in the Pico factory. I think I would add one more thing, which is we also remember how to add dependencies into our POM file. Okay, guys, this is it for this session number 6. I will expecting you or waiting for you in the next session. See ya.